Whether you can hear them or not could depend on how neurotypical your mind is.
What are you saying exactly?
I'm many things, Sugar Macaulay, but neurotypical has never been one of them.
I am autistic. I was diagnosed by a specialist psychiatrist later in life in 2020. And unfortunately, a lot of women and AFAB individuals get diagnosed later or go underdiagnosed. This is due to the fact that the original diagnostic criteria was for the way that ASD presented itself in men and AMAB individuals, which really sucks because getting diagnosed is super important. My diagnosis helped me learn about myself and look after myself in ways I never could before. It helped me find a whole community of people where I felt like I could belong. It completely changed my life for the better in so many ways. That's why today I'm going to talk about ASD and what being autistic means for me. And to help me communicate, I'm going to express myself through one of my lifelong special interests.
Oh, I can't wait. How old is he?
ASD stands for Autism Spectrum Disorder. And although I was only recently diagnosed, it's something that I was born with. Autism occurs within the development of the brain. This is why we think differently and communicate differently from our holistic peers. But difference isn't a bad thing. And I, for one, love the way my brain works. Unfortunately, there still is a lot of fear, stigma, and misinformation surrounding autism and what it actually is. I hope you're all good at scraping brains off the wall because I'm about to blow your minds. Just kidding. But seriously, I know what you're thinking. I know what autism is. It's a spectrum from mild to severe that looks like this. Wrong! Autism is a spectrum, alright, but it's not a linear occurrence. Autism can present itself in so many different and unique ways. It's more like a sound engineer's mixing desk. Or, if we're going to stick with the Doctor Who theme, just like how all generations of the Doctor are different people but still the Doctor inside. Each has their own unique personalities but still present themselves as the Doctor. And I bet you're thinking, oh well, you're talking in this YouTube video, Jessie, so you must be pretty high functioning. Wrong again! Functioning labels are actually incredibly harmful to the community. Not only were they used in the Holocaust to differentiate between which of us Hans Asperger would send to their deaths, but they often exaggerate people with high support needs, meanwhile discrediting and dismissing those with low support needs. Well, Jessie, why must we talk so much about it? You're not just autism. Strike 3 and you're out. Autistic people prefer to be called autistic people. Shocker. Person-first language surrounding autism insinuates that autism is a separate part of me that I carry around, or an illness that I suffer from, all which isn't true. Autism is the way my brain is wired. If I wasn't autistic, I would be a completely different person than the one that you guys know. It would essentially be like dying. Everything I do is impacted by the way my brain works. Everything I do is autistic, and it is a core part of my identity. This is why me and many other autistic individuals love going by identity-first language. As I mentioned earlier, autism isn't a linear occurrence, and our abilities are as fluid as our traits and symptoms. For example, I know an autistic person who is creative, confident, extroverted, driven, socializes. They're an active, successful, extroverted person. This person can use their traits and symptoms to their advantage. I also know an autistic person that struggles with social cues, can't regulate their emotions, is affected daily by their sensory issues, will never hold down a full-time job, has meltdowns, depression, has non-verbal episodes. This person struggles with their traits daily. Both these people are me.
It's my party, and all of me is invited.
Growing up as an undiagnosed autistic kid, I always felt like I didn't belong and I was alienated from everyone around me. I knew I was different, but I didn't know why. It felt like everyone was on a totally different frequency from me, and I was put on a planet where just nobody could understand me. And this occurred in reverse too. My siblings and me never really got along because They couldn't understand where I was coming from. The kids at school bullied me because they saw me as different and weird or not normal, and this frightened them. This leads to one of the downsides of being autistic: the never-ending loneliness.
Oh, such a lonely childhood. Oh, Doctor. So lonely, so very, very alone. Lonely then and lonelier now. How can you bear it?
Despite hating feeling lonely, I actually didn't mind being alone. I never felt the heaviness or peer pressure to fit in because it didn't really matter to me. I've never cared about society's expectations or how things are supposed to be. I've always just been comfortable doing my own thing, which, you guessed it, is actually an autistic trait. My other autistic traits include hyper-empathy. Most people associate autism with lacking empathy, and those people do exist and it can manifest itself that way. I, however, have what they call too much empathy, although to me it's kind of like you guys don't have enough.
How do you people manage one heart? It is pitiful.
I contain so much empathy. Even watching things on TV or reading a book can be too much for me emotionally because the characters and the things that are happening feel real, to me anyway. I have always been a highly sensitive person, and hyper-empathy is a part of that. But as I've grown, I've learned to use it as a strength, whether that be in relationships, whether that be creating art, or using my intuition.
You are proud of your emotions.
Oh, yes.
Then tell me, Doctor, have you known grief and rage and pain?
Yes. Yes, I have.
And they hurt?
Oh, yes.
I can set you free. Would you not want that? A life without pain?
You might as well kill me.
Post-diagnosis, I have learned to keep myself safe by respecting my own boundaries so that I'm not constantly overwhelmed by everything that is going on in life, and so that I don't push myself too far. It may not be easy, but it's definitely worth it if you are a hyper-empathetic person. Although I have hyper-empathy, paradoxically, I struggle with cognitive empathy. Although constantly sitting in deep, intense feelings, I tend to approach the world with facts and logic. So relating to others cognitively can be difficult. For example, if someone's crying, it would affect me so much that I would want to cry too. However, if I ask them what's wrong, their answer is usually rooted in feelings that align with social rules and social hierarchy. Two things that don't necessarily equate with logic and facts. So I might not understand why whatever upset them.
It's not what I mean.
Okay. Some help. Context. Cheat sheet. Something?
This adherence to knowledge and facts affects me socially too, and being autistic, I experience social differences. It's not that I don't want to or can't communicate, it sometimes just gets a bit tricky because I communicate differently. I'm a very honest, blunt, and open person. Some people have appreciated my honesty, whilst others think I'm being intentionally rude because I don't sugarcoat what I say or wrap my answers and dialogue up in subtext and cryptic social phrases that I'm supposed to just know. Or sometimes they assume I'm being subtextual, only for me to just be telling it exactly how it is and saying exactly what's on my mind.
It's too dangerous.
I eat danger for breakfast. I don't. I prefer cereal. Or croissants. Or there's little fried Portuguese. Apple bobbing! I love apple bobbing! Those are excellent nose hairs. Am I being weird?
A little bit, yeah.
I'm trying to do small talk. I thought I was doing quite well.
All the social rules our society follow are made up. It doesn't seem important to do things just because that's how it's always been done or that's just what you do. To me, that just seems pointless. The reasons behind following them are often coated in fear or judgment from peers around you. So to me, it's like the world is operating under a system that is playing silly make-believe to appease anxiety within themselves that needn't be there to begin with. This, of course, leads to my social differences because not caring about or not following social rules often leaves you as an outcast.
thought you were going out. Just reconnecting all the electrics. It's a real mess. Where's the on switch for this? He really is just on his way out.
No, I don't mind. I mean, if you don't mind.
I don't mind. Why would I mind?
Then stay, have a drink with us.
What? Do I have to stay now? Do you want to stay? I don't mind.
Okay.
Great.
And my social differences don't really end there. Being autistic, I am a literal thinker. Sometimes jokes or sarcasm just confuse me.
Hello, Benjamin.
On TV, they make it obvious. I can watch a TV show and see the joke is set up, all the characters in the scene, and everything is set up for it to be that way. And they have so much dramatic inflection, it's so obvious. In real life, I swear you guys are just saying things. You guys are just lying and saying that it's sarcasm and acting like it's supposed to be funny. I hate it. I'm constantly told it was sarcasm with an air of, you just don't understand my humor abilities. It'll never make sense to me. Often autistic people are known to have a strong sense of justice, and I am no exception.
You are so on the team. Next week we've got the crown and anchor. We're gonna annihilate them.
Annihilate? No, no violence. Do you understand me? Not while I'm around, not today, not ever. I'm the doctor of the oncoming storm. And you basically meant beat them in a football match, didn't you?
Yeah.
Lovely. What sort of time?
I am very black and white with my morals and beliefs. And of course I can see the grey area, but I am less likely to accept the grey area than my holistic friends. To me, what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And I can't stand for morals and values that hurt other people.
You have to be the best of humanity. We can land this together. If you are the best you can be.
Of course, because of this, I can hold myself to an incredibly high standard.
I had a choice. They knew I'd choose the Earth. The Daleks have won. They beat me, they've won.
But you saved the Earth. Not too shabby, is it? Is it?
No, it's not too shabby.
A classic symptom of autism is sensory differences. I process my senses differently. I am either hyper, as in extremely, or hypo, as in lacking sensory experiences. For example, I am hypersensitive to touch. It lingers, and you're like, they have, I don't know, it feels way too intimate, if that makes sense. It feels like they've also touched your soul. Ooh, one of the worst things I could imagine is getting a massage. A stranger touching me? No, thank you. I always thought that if robots ever overtook the world and they started replacing everybody's jobs, if massages and those kind of practices was something they overtook, I'd be cool with it.
I'm not a hugger.
I'm hypersensitive to sight. The world is bright for me and I can't walk down the street without these bad boys. Before diagnosis, I was constantly overwhelming myself, burning myself out and squinting all the time when I walked down the street. These are my sensory shades, and when I first tried these on for the first time, I was like, oh, we're supposed to see the edges of things when we walk places? Damn! I spent so much of my childhood having meltdowns and being constantly overwhelmed and overstimulated because I didn't own such a simple thing.
Doctor, you don't have your screwdriver.
Oh yeah, I'm over screwdrivers. They spoil the line of your jacket. These days I'm all about wearable technology.
No. No. Seriously?
Being hypersensitive to sight, I also have a unique visual difference called visual snow syndrome. It's like I can see the particles of the earth vibrating, and the world to me looks like this. I'm also hypersensitive to sound. Things are louder for me. I experience sound as more of a full body experience. And when something is too loud, it is physically painful to my entire body. I can't even explain the way my heart races and the amount of overwhelming anxiety and pressure I get from hearing, say, a motorbike rev its engine down the street. And you don't want to be living like that every day, right? So that's where these babies come in. These are my noise-cancelling headphones. They make my life a lot easier by making sure that I'm not overwhelmed. But I have heard you can get more discreet ones, so I'm looking into that. Being hypersensitive to sound, I also have another unique experience called synesthesia. There are many forms of synesthesia, but the one that I have aligns color with sound. Every sound has a color and vice versa, and both combined give off its own unique energy. On the other hand, I am hyposensitive to my olfactory senses. You would think that it doesn't come up that much, but I can't smell. And believe it or not, it actually comes up quite a lot. People constantly ask me to smell things or if I can smell the weird odor that's in a room, and I just can't. I mean, I sometimes can. I'm not completely nose deaf, but if nose hearing aids ever existed, I would definitely need some. And I am always paranoid that I'm gonna eat something off or accidentally not be able to smell a gas leak. But I get by, and I think it's sometimes cool that I'm immune to stinky stuff, you know? I never really thought that I had any trouble tasting, but I do really love strong tasting food and have a really big sweet tooth. So maybe that's also a part of it, because they say that smell and taste can link together sometimes. I'm hypersensitive in other areas too. I have what is called hypersensitive proprioception, which is a technical fancy word to describe being medically clumsy. Proprioception is the cognitive sense of kinesthetic awareness, which explains why I would accidentally whack into people in dance class. Having hypersensitive proprioception means I lack awareness of my actions, movement, and its location.
Watch and learn, kid.
I'm constantly whacking into things and accidentally hitting people or knocking things over. The dyspraxic clumsiness does not end there though. Sometimes my hands will just bug out on me. Like, I will go to do something and pick something up and my hands will just whoop.
Okay, just tell her you're leaving, you're not going up. You're leaving, you're not going up. Was that about 5 minutes? Where did that come from?
This usually only occurs when I'm burnt out though, or overwhelmed, as everything heightens when I'm in that state. Probably the most obvious autistic trait I have is stimming. Fun sciencey fact, energy can never be created, only transferred. So what happens when you have heightened emotions and heightened senses is you're taking a lot more in from the world around you. And because of this, all that energy builds up in your body and needs somewhere to go so that you don't explode. And this is where stimming comes in. Stimming is self-regulatory behavior to soothe yourself from the constant stimuli. Neurotypical people can stim. Autistic people just do it a lot more frequently and a lot more obviously.
Love the tower. Breakfast at 8, please. Will there be Wi-Fi?
Are you capable of speaking without flapping your hands about?
Yes. No.
My stims personally include squinching my toes. Although I did get a lot of negative reaction from my family, who would always tell me to stop doing it whenever I had my shoes off. Moving my feet sporadically is another stim of mine, same with my hands. I often flap and shake my hands whenever I'm excited, whenever I'm upset, especially when I'm excited. I do a lot of flapping and jumping. Another obvious frequent stim of mine is putting my hands up to my mouth, and it drives me insane because I know it's unhygienic and I can't stop doing it. I've tried so much, but I don't know if it's because I'm more sensitive on my mouth or something, but it's just, I do it all the time. I've even sort of bent my fingers out of shape from the constant twiddling and finger popping and putting them up to my mouth. But I am hoping to buy some Chewy Stim toys soon so that I can redirect it away from my hands and still kind of let the energy out. Another way I frequently stim is rocking back and forth. A lot of neurotypicals might think that if I rock back and forth that I'm in distress, and although I do stim a lot when I'm distressed as well as happy, sometimes I'm just rocking just to let out natural energy. Vocal stimming by singing and humming is probably one of my other well-known stims. Since I was old enough to talk, shouting phrases, singing and humming to self-soothe has been my go-to, and I mean, I sort of got a little bit of practice at the same time, which was helpful, but I did get a lot of people telling me to shut up. So a really good visual stim that I love doing is looking at all the cute little edits I have on like Instagram and YouTube to songs that I've heard a billion times, watching things that I've seen a billion times to songs I've heard a billion times, with the characters I love and the things that make me feel inspired. It makes me feel at home like nothing else. You've probably noticed how my social differences and sensory issues aren't as apparent in this YouTube video, and you wouldn't have known I was autistic if I didn't say anything. This is because, like many other autistics, I have learnt to mask. Masking is when an autistic person learns to hide or suppress their autistic traits from years of trauma. Autistic people often grow up getting rejected and shamed for the things they do naturally and not knowing any better. It's sort of a win-lose situation.
What I've got to do is pass as an ordinary human being. Simple. What could possibly go wrong?
On the one hand, I get to successfully communicate with all the people I love. On the other, I do get constantly burnt out and overwhelmed and exhausted from having to mask so frequently. Don't get it twisted, I'm not fake when I mask. Masking is something I do when I am still my real personality inside, but I hide my most obvious stims, follow social rules without wanting to, script responses, and even force eye contact by looking at people's glabellas. Luckily, I have really great, understanding friends in my life who let me be a really blunt oversharer. But going out into the world requires me to mask and have scripted responses to navigate the social aspect of everyday life.
Doctor, what are you doing here?
Social call. Thought it was about time I tried one out. How are you?
I'm fine.
This is the bit where I say I'm fine too, isn't it? I'm fine too. Good. Love to Sophie. Bye.
At the moment, I unmask when I'm alone and when I'm out in public alone, and just deal with the stares I get and judgmental comments or people assuming I'm on drugs. Although I wish to one day create a world where it's safe to unmask for autistic people all the time, it's unfortunately not realistic for my social life, career, and safety to do so. But isn't that exhausting? Yes! Yes, it is! Because I mask socializing, I often get burnt out and overwhelmed more easily, and this can lead to meltdowns. Meltdowns are one of the downsides to autism. They've happened throughout my life and I'll always be at risk of having them. Meltdowns are a giant sort of episode that look like a giant tantrum, but you can't actually stop it or control your body, even though you know how it looks to the outside world.
Okay, I know that face. Calm down. Calm down! No! Talk to me, doctor!
You just have to sort of let this awful energy burst out of you, and you can't even talk. You're just screaming and making high-pitched noises because that's also happening. And it's just so helpless because you can't physically control your body in that moment. You're stimming uncontrollably, screaming, crying, and you can even do what's called self-harm stims, where you pull at your hair or hit yourself in the head or bash your head against stuff. And you don't want to hit yourself, but there's nothing you can do. You feel like all the energy from your senses and all the energy from your emotions are exploding and that it'll never stop. Then it of course does stop and eventually ends, but then I often shut down and go selectively mute because I'm so drained from the experience. It takes a lot of mental and physical recovery, and even basic self-care can become too hard for me. Growing up, I received no help for my meltdowns, which just made them worse, and I got abused for them, which wasn't fair. People thought I was doing them on purpose when they were due to a disorder that I couldn't control. The best thing you can do if your loved one is having a meltdown is firstly, give them space and privacy. We're very vulnerable when we have meltdowns and we don't really want to be seen in that way. Reduce sensory stresses like sound and lights and remove them from the emotional trigger. If you need to communicate with them, you'll have to do it in a way that requires little to non-verbal responses, because the autistic person may be non-verbal, and only step in if the autistic person is doing self-harm stims, like I mentioned earlier, for safety. Redirect them using firm touch, not light touch, because touch being a sensory experience might be a sensory trigger, so firm touch to redirect them from doing anything that harms themselves. Meltdowns are exhausting and drain your energy, so you will need to rest to recover. Make sure though while you're resting, you engage in your special interests that don't require much effort to engage with. This will help you recharge. Speaking of special interests, as an autistic person, obsessions or special interests have been a massive part of my life. And when I say obsession, I don't mean, wow, hashtag Stan, you're my #1 idol. I mean bigger than that.
What's that mean?
But you're obsessively enthusiastic about it.
Oh, nice.
My special interests help me communicate, feel understood, connected, and feel alive. They can be all I think about daily, and I center my existence around them. They mean as much to me as life itself. My obsessions or special interests are, let's start with the elephant in the room, obviously Doctor Who. As an autistic child who was lonely and confused, I didn't feel like I had anyone that I could relate to. I didn't see myself represented in life or in my community. Then I was flicking through channels one night when I was 9 years old, happened to switch over to ABC2, saw Doctor Who, and that was the first time I had ever seen myself represented in life and in the media. It was an absolute pivotal moment in my life. To a 9-year-old that feels misunderstood by their friends, peers, and family, that's everything. I found someone that I could see myself in, and up until that point, I didn't have very positive role models in my life. So of course, I became instantly infatuated, obsessed, and I still am to this day. But it's not just Doctor Who. TV, specifically, especially sci-fi and fantasy, will always be an obsession of mine. In fact, the whole of Super Who-log has a solid chokehold on me to this day. Whether it's relating to characters and finding comfort and inspiration during my darkest times, if it's a series, sitcom, or movie, it's the center of my life. And my obsession with media only extends. Performing arts and art has always been a special interest of mine, and an incredible outlet for my abundance of energy. As I mentioned earlier, singing to vocal stim was the way that I self-soothed. Same with writing. This eventually evolved into singing and songwriting as I grew up. A more peculiar special interest that is still creative in a way, and new to my list of obsessions, is witchcraft. My party trick is breaking out the tarot for everyone and reading their futures. If there's a herb, crystal, or spell that can remedy a certain issue, I know about it and I'm ready to tell you about it. This planet is full of natural cycles, systems, and energy. It's so wonderful and exciting because witchcraft is all about working with the universe, harness these energies, and be your best self. Growing up and having such deep connections to things, I was often hurt by others who didn't understand. Obviously, everyone's allowed their own opinions, and as a society, we should respect that. However, when somebody dislikes and then puts down a special interest of mine, it feels like they're putting down me. And most Autistic people will think, well, it can't be that serious, but they've never experienced this type of obsessive love. The best way I can explain it, it's not liking the thing that's your obsession, that is your personality. It's like the thing itself is your soul and your personality. So please be kind to autistic people when they engage with their special interest or talk about it in front of you. They're sharing something with you that's personal. It means the whole world to them. The longer you live and the more you grow, you realize that life is incredibly beautiful, diverse, and complex. You get to appreciate the similarities, but also the amazing and fascinating differences. I'm proud to be different. I'm proud to be autistic. If I wasn't autistic, I'd be a totally different person, because it's the way that my brain's wired, and if it wasn't wired the same way, I simply wouldn't exist. I believe we should accept diversity of all kinds. As long as you're not hurting anyone, you're an okay human in my book. Difference is a huge part of nature, history, and this planet, and not something to be feared, outcast, or hated. If you relate to any of the experiences I've mentioned, and are thinking that you might too also be autistic, I highly recommend going to see a professional. Getting diagnosed by a psychiatrist changed my entire life, and sometimes seeking answers from professionals is exactly what you need to understand yourself. And if you're still here, thank you so much for watching my video. Like and subscribe if you want more content like this, and I'll see you guys shortly.